freaking first cut. Golly. Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your DFS preview for this week's Wyndham Championship. And joining me to break it all down, Nejad is here. Sia, what up?
Rick, what is up? After watching you play golf last week, I got to wonder, are you going to be in this tournament? Are you a late ad?
I'm the 90th alternate, so we need a couple of guys to drop out of here, and then I'll be right in the mix. You can roster me for the min price. I can fail to make the cut, and all will be right in the world, I think, is the way this whole thing shakes out. Greg DuCharme is here. Greg, you are back in action. Good to have you on a Monday.
Well, I'm very, very, very happy to be back. If you have to miss one for, vacation and family time, I personally can live with that, but to miss two in a row, it's out of the question. I'm thrilled to be back. This is the thing. I took a little vacation last week, a little more than a week. And one thing that I realized is how much I love covering this stuff with you guys. So it brings a lot of appreciation to me. So I'm fired up. But Rick, before I know this is a long intro, and I don't mean to get on a soapbox here, but you're around playing golf. Sweet to watch. Okay. It's a great idea. But the biggest piece of advice I can give you, you can't make the title "My Chipping Sucks." You can't. That's
an ode to Victor.
Now I understand. But you can't say that. You can't say that about yourself.
Listen, you got to do it for the clicks. Also,
it's good for clicks. It's good for clicks.
I'm happy to take advice from you, Greg, because everybody in the comments, believe it or not, is a swing coach on YouTube. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, Greg. I got all the tips, man. Hey, you're doing this wrong. The next guy, the opposite. It's amazing. I love it.
I'm gonna try to employ them all. But it's like you can't go into a fantasy golf competition and say I suck at fantasy golf and expect to do well. You got to go in. You got to go in with confidence, like you're going to win. So, that's my one piece of advice, but I do understand the clicks and the ode to Victor.
If I may, the show you did on 300 Yards to Unknown with Greg, with all of those tips and advice, that was a really good show. I listened to it start to finish. I think people should go back and listen to that show. It was excellent.
Greg, well, first of all, thank you. And Greg, that is, last I checked, one of the most listened to episodes in a long time. And I got a lot of feedback about that. People love that. Might have to have you back on and keep on the grind.
Anytime. We like helping you. The thing is, when somebody feels like they can get a little bit out of it, right? I know who my picks are going to be for the week. I know what I can do to improve my game. Those are the things people love, and it's what I love to do. So thank you for having me on. It was an honor.
Well, let's be confident about this slate. The Wyndham Championship, see a Sedgefield Country Club hosting every year since 2008. It is indeed a Donald Ross design, but I think the big overarching storyline you're going to hear a lot, Sia, is it's the regular season finale. This is where every shot counts, right? This is where you either make or break your opportunities to get into the FedEx Cup playoffs. That's the narrative for the week. Do you care about that in your fantasy lineups?
Not really. I've kind of found if you go back historically and you look at hey this guy like Ricky Fowler needs to do well in this tournament to qualify for such and such. It usually it's not high impact in my opinion. That doesn't mean that those guys can't do well. I just think those guys are probably going to do well because of course history, like you might have here, or because of recent form, things, or how they look relative to the field. But in terms of hey man, they need to make it to get into the playoffs. I just don't think that's a narrative. I'm the captain and king of narratives, but that's not a narrative I think I want to get into.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here. Everything you see is from my website. It's from RickRunGood.com. And Greg, when you look at Sedgefield, it is a place that I think is usually pretty consistent. The last 5 years, 20 under par or better has won it. It is kind of your classic Donald Ross design, generally played at the same exact time every single year. This is pretty consistent. What can we expect out of Sedgefield this week?
It's a really cool golf course because there's an opportunity to shoot 59 like Brant Snedeker did a while ago, but there are some really demanding shots, some tricky shot values. You have that Bermuda grass rough that it kind of reminds me of what we saw in Memphis, where it's not like US Open rough we're used to, where it's difficult to get out of, where you're going to end up short of greens, but it gives you enough to think about when you're approaching these greens, which can get firm. They are slopey. You have to be on the right side of the hole location here. And when you get in the rough, it's really hard to control distance. So I think good drivers of the golf ball do really well here. I think of a guy like CT Pan or Webb Simpson, guys that can really put the ball in play nicely. But ultimately, it's like a lot of courses we play on tour where it comes down to an approach fest. I just think there's a little bit heavier of an influence on driving accuracy.
Yeah, the Webb Simpson Championship is what we could call this. See, we'll get to that a little bit later. But Greg's eye test and my data test align. So I run this for the last dozen years. The Sedgefield data is really, really strong because of everything that I mentioned. We haven't missed a year. It's hosted constantly, generally the same exact spot on the calendar. And driving accuracy was the strongest correlated stat to success. Webb Simpson certainly helps in that category, but being able to play out of the short grass, giving yourself a lot of, in this case, a lot of wedges, a lot of 9-irons into these greens, that is how you are going to separate yourself from the rest of the field.
Yeah, and you could almost just look at those top three that you have there: driving accuracy, birdie or better percentage, strokes gained, putting. If you look at those three and that's how you build your model, you're probably not that far off. I mean, obviously you can add approach there. If you want to add proximities, you can do that too. But I totally agree. Keep it in the fairway. If you have a great approach game, that's obviously big time. And then you are going to have to putt, and I mean, if you're good on Bermuda, just like last week, that's great. But again, I don't think I can take the bad putters. I'm going to be leaning on guys that have been good putters historically and recently.
The best Bermuda specialist in the field, Patton Kizzire, at least with the guy with enough rounds. Very good on Bermuda, gains about a half a stroke per round, which is nearly double his normal baseline. Let's look at the 10K range here, Greg. And it is pretty interesting because we've got Hideki Matsuyama leading the way at $11,000. I went and checked my database. I could not find another instance of Hideki being the most expensive golfer on a slate. So Hideki does it here. He's $11,000. Louis Oosthuizen is $10,007. Webb Simpson is $10,006. And then the bottom of the $10,000 range is Zalatoris, Reed, and Jason Kokrak. Kokrak is an even $10,000. When you look at this range, we have an elite course history guy. We have Hideki, who's been scorching, and we have Louis, who has been phenomenal all year long. What do you see here?
Oh, I see a great range. But I think the easiest way to handle this range first is to rule out, if you take Sia's model here, I don't think I can take the bad putters. I agree with that. And so to me, that rules out Hideki. It also helps that he's the highest priced player in the field. So it's kind of, even though he's been on a heater, it's a little easier to put him aside because he has that glaring weakness. Then you look at Will Zalatoris, who also notoriously has struggles on the greens. I don't think it limits his chance of performing well. I do think it limits his chance of winning. And this is a range where you're looking for the win. You're looking for the winner. You're really hoping the guy you choose in the 10K range wins the tournament. You're obviously going to get the most value out of that, but these are the guys that you expect to have a chance to win. So now you're left with four guys who I think all four of these guys have a legitimate chance to win, and they really fit the mold. And it's Louis, Webb, Reed, and Kokrak. All four of those guys to me are really good options. Louis has been scorching, not only in all of his play, but especially with the putter. His driving may be a little bit of concern, but he can drive it really well. Just at times he's had some unfortunate misses off the tee. Webb loves the golf course, but he hasn't been playing necessarily like Webb of late. This year hasn't been the Webb year of last year, but he still loves the golf course, and he's on definitely an upward trend in my opinion. And Jason Kokrak to me has kind of a, 3 of the last 4 years, he's had top 15 finishes here. This year is the best year he's had putting the golf ball. And he's driving it really well, like he always does. So I think Kokrak is really interesting here as well.
Let's dive deeper into Webb here because he's the one that we're going to have to make a decision on. Sia, you're probably going to have to take a stand on Webb Simpson, either for him or against him. And Greg's right. The last couple of months for Webb haven't been particularly great. And the first 3 rounds in Memphis weren't particularly great. He lost strokes on approach in each of the first 3. And then just in time to head to his favorite golf course on the planet, he goes out and shoots one of the lowest rounds of the day on Sunday, gains 3 strokes on approach, which, by the way, Sia, Webb mentioned that in an interview. I think he told, oh, I'm going to step on myself here. Did he tell Michael, did you have Webb on Sirius?
Yes, this morning.
Okay,
I was going to jump. I didn't want to step on Sia's toes, but I was going to say, I'll give you a quick insight before, and I'm dying to hear what Sia has to say, but he talked about how the key to his win at Waste Management was his increase in distance. He was able to pick up 10 or 15 yards, and it led to that win. It took some bunkers out of play. But in doing that, he got a little more side bend in his swing, and it affected his iron play, which all year I've been saying Webb hasn't been as sharp with his irons. And he confirmed it today, which was really cool. But since the Open Championship, he's kind of been working away from that a little bit, keeping his shoulders a little more level. We don't need to get technical here, but it's improved his iron play. And he's starting to, at least whether the stats bear it out or not, he's starting to feel better with his irons. And that's the area that he's really attacking, the area that he's focusing on. And I think that bodes really well for him heading into a place that, I mean, you could call it the Webb Simpson Championship just as easily as the Wyndham Championship.
Yeah, he literally named his daughter after this event, named his daughter Wyndham. I just liked the fact, Sia, that he knew that he gained 3 strokes on approach in his final round. He's very in tune with what he's doing out there. But this, to me, this is one of the most difficult decisions you're going to have to make this week. Are you a Webb guy or are you not a Webb guy? That's going to be the question a lot of people are asking themselves.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to be a Webb guy a little bit, but not a lot. And I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but let me give you why I'm saying it like that. It's because I think I want to play a little bit contrarian up here too. First of all, I do like Louis. I'll say that. I do like Webb Simpson. And by the way, I listened to Webb Simpson on PGA Tour Radio, Sirius XM yesterday after his round. I didn't hear him this morning, Greg, on your show, but he was really confident. He was really happy with his round. He was really excited to go to the Wyndham. And he actually mentioned, getting COVID earlier in the year and kind of being injured overall, like in the first 6 months of the season. And it sounded like he's finally past that. And he sounded really confident going into next week. So I think that's just kind of an interesting side note. I do think he sort of turned a corner, not just with what we saw in round 4, but mentally it sounds like he turned a corner as well. I like Louis. I mean, Louis grades out so well, but I do want to mention Zalatoris and Hideki. I think those are potentially sort of contrarian plays when we see ownership percentages bear out. Hideki, listen, he lost with the putter last week. No huge surprise, but it wasn't a huge loss. It was less than a stroke, but he gained 13.19 strokes tee to green last week. He was plus 8.88 on approach. I mean, he's striking the ball so well. I think all of these guys in this upper crust have plenty of win equity. It's just a matter of, where you want to take your chance. And I think you can take a chance with Hideki and Zalatoris, who, by the way, Zalatoris gained almost 4 strokes putting last week too. I know he's just been a really bad putter, and he's kind of been bad for Zalatoris standards, the last 24 or 36 rounds or so. But if that putter has sort of come around, and it's a big if, but we saw some evidence of it last week, I think Zalatoris could also be a contrarian play. So I like Webb, but I like Louis, but I also like Hideki and Zalatoris. And if the ownership is right, I think I might take a stab there.
Zalatoris 10,300. Let me put a bow on this $10,000 range because I don't get to do this often. But here is Webb Simpson's results at the Wyndham Championship since 2010. And I'll go oldest first. 8th win, 22nd, 11th, 5th, 6th, 72nd, bum. 3rd, runner-up, 3rd. I mean, this is Daniel Berger at Southwind, Webb at Wyndham. I mean, this is elite level stuff here. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned it before we move on.
If he wins this week, or if he wins here again, well, let's just say hypothetically it's this week. So he's got 2 wins at the venue now. This, I think, is the strongest course history example, like the strongest horses for courses example we have on the PGA Tour. I think it's stronger than Berger at at Southwind.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's a better one. Maybe Brooks Koepka Majors, if you count that. But
what did Stricker do at John Deere besides the 3 wins?
Not
as good as
like
this.
It was 3 in a row, but it was not as good as this. He had a couple of like 50 somethings, a couple of bizarre ones, which this is all off the top of my head, but it doesn't, the non-wins with Stricker didn't wow me as much as they do for Webb here.
And this obviously with the caveat of non-Tiger, because Tiger at Bay Hill would have been.
Course. Yeah,
everything is non-Tiger because that's all the default number one.
Right.
All right, fair enough. $9,000 range here. See a Brian Harman, Tommy Fleetwood, Sung Jae Im. I've got some thoughts about those guys. I've also got some thoughts about Russell Henley. And then we go to the bottom of the range. Matthew Wolff, Adam Scott, Siwoo Kim, who had himself a Sunday, and Bubba Watson. $9,000 range. Who's moving the needle for you?
For the first time in a long time, and with all due respect to the players in this range, I really hate this range. I honestly don't love anybody. If you made me pick a couple guys, I'd start with Russell Henley.
Yeah, let's start with Russell Henley.
Sure. And I like his course history here. And he's popped lately. He's been a little inconsistent, but certainly a great course fit. I like him quite a bit. And I think, Brian Harman, he was pretty underwhelming last week. That might keep people off him, especially at a 9,900 price tag. But, again, he has good course history here too, a 27th and a 6th his last 2 tries here. He's obviously a good course fit. I didn't love how he played last week, but, he had a 19th at the Open. So his recent history is pretty good, 5th at the Travelers. Those are the 2 guys I like, but again, I'm not on anybody else.
Henley, the last time we saw him, it was a while ago. It was the Open Championship. He missed the cut. His 3 starts before that were all top 20s. He gained a bunch of strokes on approach in each of those. He's now gained on approach in 4 of his last 5 measured events. We don't have his Open Championship numbers. They do not exist. Henley back in action this week. So, okay, Greg, if Sia, who notoriously loves the $9,000 range, doesn't like it. Can I get some love out of you for some of these guys?
I wouldn't go as far as to say love.
Oh man. Okay.
But I don't hate it as much. I mean, this isn't a new t-shirt here. There's some, I think there's an interesting guy, Brian Harman, who you mentioned, I really like. I definitely think he is a very solid play. I don't think he's a guy that I would stay away from by any means. He fits the course and his play, although, yes, it wasn't great last week, it wasn't alarming. There was nothing bad. If you look at his recent form and you saw a win T36, T19, cut T5, T19, T8, you'd say, okay, this guy, he had it coming. He had something coming here. There's no real high rounds. There's a lot to like about Brian Harman. So he is a guy I'm fairly confident with. He's a good play. The interesting play to me is Adam Scott here.
Ooh.
Which I don't know if I've liked Adam Scott in an event since like the Genesis.
I was gonna say since Riviera, yeah.
Like I don't think there's been one where I've said, okay, this is Adam Scott time. But the play has been coming together to some degree. Again, there's a couple of high rounds, which I think are potentially a good thing. It's a sign that he's close. It's a sign that he needed a rhythm, and I think he may be getting that. He was he's made, I'm sorry, I'm stuttering here, but he's made 5 cuts in a row. He's got 2 top 16 finishes in there, one at the Travelers, one back at the Memorial. He was 36th last week with a round of 74 in the first round, 66, 70, 68. So there's some good play, but the reason I like him, his strength this year is his putting.
Yes, right? I was just looking at that.
16th in strokes gained putting, and he's still holding his own to some degree with his iron play. He's 60th strokes gained approach. Where Adam Scott does not grade out is his driving accuracy. But with that golf swing, it's hard for me to picture Adam Scott spraying the ball and hitting it out of play, and that being why he doesn't contend. So I feel like he can hit some fairways when he needs to. I think he likes a tree line style golf course. I think it should be a good fit. And he might be Brian Harman would be my top choice in this range, and Adam Scott would be my second choice.
Since the Farmers, that was at the end of January, Patrick Reed won that event. Since the Farmers, Adam Scott's been the 7th best putter on the PGA Tour, or excuse me, in this field. He's ahead of Patrick Reed, and Brian Harman's the 5th best putter in that time period. Of course, Louis stays at number 1. He's been rolling the rock like crazy. I've got one guy, Sia, and then I want to tell a little bit of a story. I can feel a case to be made for Sung Jae Im, who lost, let's see, 4.6 strokes putting last week. It was the 2nd worst putting performance of his career, which is rare in itself because leading into that event, he had been a very good putter. He had gained strokes in 5 straight. He's starting to figure out the ball striking. Bermuda is historically his best putting surface, and he has 2 top 10 finishes at this event in the 2 opportunities that he has played it. I could make a case that we are trending towards a Sung Jae Im week. Your thoughts, please.
Well, a couple questions first. I mean, we were on Bermuda last week, right?
We were.
Okay, and he lost almost 5 strokes putting. So I just wonder how much of an advantage that is to him. Now, of course, you could have a bad few rounds putting. I totally get that. The problem I have with Sung Jae is you're right. He's trending in the right direction, but at this price tag, is this something we want to take a chance with? I mean, if you look at, I think Tee to Green, he only gained maybe a stroke throughout the tournament last week.
That is correct.
Rounds. So, I mean, we're looking at somebody who, yeah, he can rebound with the putter, but hey, what's going on over here with the ball striking? So that's sort of the problem I'm having with Sung Jae. By the way, I know you're going to respond to that, but I hope the story you're about to tell is about Siwoo Kim. Fingers crossed. Oh, thank God. Okay.
Yeah, let's just do it. So Siwoo Kim, who, let me tell you guys, has just elite history here. He's won once. He's finished, I think, 5th and 8th. He's played it 4 times. He missed the cut in his 4th trip. So I'm sure there's a lot of excitement to be rostering Mr. Siwoo Kim this week. Now, you might have seen that he made an 11 on, what was it? The par 3 11th, I think it was. Is that right, Greg?
13? It was 1 on the second 9. I don't remember. I think it must have been was it 14?
I don't remember. And it doesn't matter.
It's got to be 11. I think it was 11.
I think it was 11 too. So he puts 5 balls in the water and he goes on to lose 10.2 strokes on approach on Sunday, which, and Sia, you know this, I'm happy to write off 5 balls in the water as a bad hole and not even worry about it. But he also lost strokes and a lot of them on approach in the other 3 rounds to the point where he lost, and I want to make sure I get this right, 17 strokes on approach last week at the WGC, which is in my database by far the worst single week of approach play. Now ahead of Smiley Kaufman at the 2021 Barbasol.
So real quick, if you're not watching this on YouTube, I do encourage you to watch it because Rick just had the round by round breakdown, and it really gives you an illustration because you might think, well, all the loss on approach was just, that hole in that round. No, I mean, he was pretty bad on approach throughout rounds 1 through 4. I mean, really bad. It's so funny to me because he also lost almost 8 strokes, with the putter. Yes. He only gained around the green. I mean, he gained 7 strokes around the green, which is actually kind of miraculous. Lost 17 on approach and 8 with the putter. It's bananas. Like, it doesn't even, it's so hard to even imagine somebody being able to do that.
Look, here's the thing about the around the green. Well, I got 2 things on this. One, if you're gonna lose that many strokes approaching the green, it doesn't. If you're gonna hit 5 balls in the water, it doesn't come from out of nowhere. It doesn't just pop out of nowhere. That is, something's broken, and it's clear. The numbers really bear that out. Something isn't working, and you just completely lose it, and you don't know where to go to find it. You don't have a shot to get it in play. You have nothing that's safe, nothing to get a ball on a green, which players who are playing well all have that shot. Second, the strokes gain around the green thing is, I think, one of the most unique. I think it's the most unique categories in strokes gained, because if you miss a lot of greens, you have a lot more opportunity to gain strokes cumulatively. So you see somebody gain 7 strokes around the green. When you miss that many greens, you got a lot of chances, and it doesn't necessarily mean the short game's elite. So it can be a little misleading. And I've seen over the years, those 2 things go together: really bad iron play and kind of positive around the green play. And my theory is that it's because it's cumulative.
Yes, if you're not following what Greg is saying, imagine if you have one chipping opportunity and you hit a great chip and you gain a half a stroke on that single chip and you hit every other green. You do not, it's a cumulative stat. You never have another opportunity to gain. If you miss every green and you're chipping 18 times around and you are above average 18 times around, you are going to rack up strokes gained around the green because you have more opportunity to do so. It's kind of a wonky little thing.
Right. And I think that's really the only strokes gained category where it can be that misleading, where it's so much affected by another area of the game.
Right.
I don't really think putting is. I think putting does a nice job of breaking it down and separating it. I think approach play may have a little bit of that, like you and I have talked about before, Rick. But I think it does a nice job of honing in on iron play. Off the tee is the most pure. There's nothing else that affects that number.
Yeah, and everybody's hitting the same number of shots off the tee. Putting, everyone is kind of hitting the same number of putts, but if you're hitting more. Right. It's reflecting your shot. Everyone is basically hitting the same number of approach shots, but they're not all hitting the same number of around the green shots.
That you nailed it.
Yeah. So Sia, are we playing this guy or not? We're not playing this guy, right?
I'm not playing this guy. No.
Okay. I can't. Like, listen, he is unpredictable. And he's very hard to figure out. But there is really no metric outside of the fact that he has played well at Sedgefield in the past that you could hang your hat on for this week.
Does he have a birthday or anything?
See ya.
Oh, well, I'll have to look into that. So far, I've just done the narrative game, naming their children after the tournament, and of course, Webb Simpson ranks out number 1 there.
There you go. That's all you need for this week. We're going to get into the $8,000 range. This is where I think we started to get into some real value. There's a couple more stories I need to tell, but first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. This $8,000 range here, Sia, this is where things start to get really interesting. We've got some big name players like Gary Woodland and Ricky Fowler and Kevin Kisner. And then we have some of these kind of up and coming guys, Seamus Power. We've got a winner from last week, EVR, back in the field. So you are consuming this 8K range. What do you see here?
If you want to build the most balanced build of all time, you start your lineup with Seamus Power and you work from there and you work down from there. I really like Seamus Power and I don't think I need to really tell the story as to why. Obviously, finishing positions, I believe it's 3 top 10s in his last 3 tournaments. The ball striking is there. He's just kind of one of those guys that's up and coming on the scene. And I don't want to say he's mispriced, but he's certainly a value in this field at 8,500.
I'll tell the story if you don't want to tell the story. Since the start of 2021, Louis Oosthuizen has been the best player in this field. He's played 47 rounds. Seamus Power has played 42 rounds. He's the next best guy in this field since the start of 2021. He's been unbelievable. He's gaining 1.3 strokes per round. So what that looks like in terms of results is here's his last 6. 9th, 19th, 19th, 8th winner at the Barbasol a couple of weeks ago. This has been trending in the right direction, Greg. He has been piling up strokes on approach. He's been great. Now, I do wonder, there's always this hanging narrative of he had something to chase and now he got the victory. And you wonder how that affects potential motivation. But I saw this guy out here in Vegas when he was playing the Corn Ferry. He was just, I mean, I know all these guys pure every single shot, but he was puring every single shot.
Yeah, he's look, recent form to me is always something you can lean on. I think recent form outweighs course history. If you have somebody who's playing really well and that it can get to a point where the course history doesn't matter because they have confidence. And if there was a strokes gain confidence, he would be really high. He would be right up there near the top. Now, is this for real? Is this a fad? Is this are we in a Hank Lebioda situation where we're kind of wondering when is this going to end? When do I stop? Is this a one more week? Do I play him one more week? I don't know. The one thing is the win, and I just generally don't like playing guys coming off of a win. I'm not going to go with EVR this week because he won last week.
Okay, does it matter? Does it matter that his win was 3 weeks ago? You know, the opportunity to celebrate, to get back on track, to refocus. That's much different than winning one day ago.
It is. It's much different. Again, now it gets into, was this a hot streak that ended, or was this something that's real? Has he really built a a foundation? Has he turned a corner in his PGA Tour career? And I've seen him play too, Rick. I think he has that potential. And so if his confidence has really grown, he may be a great option. So I'm not sure I'm as confident as Sia in starting my lineup here. There are a couple other guys I really like.
I set you up on Seamus. So tell me who would you prefer in this range that you'd go to?
I think there are a couple of guys who all have the same first name who are interesting.
The Kevins?
The Kevins. I think the Kevins have some really interesting course history, a recent form. So my favorite Kevin, I'll rank the Kevins. Okay?
Please.
My favorite Kevin this week is Kevin Na. He is the leader on tour in strokes gained around the green. Is that just because he misses a lot of greens? He has a really good short game. Okay, we can say that. Kevin Na has a ton of win equity. He already won the Sony Open this year. We know that the guy can win, but he came in tied second at the John Deere Classic. He was tied 23rd last week. And back at the Travelers, he came in tied 47th with a poor Sunday round of 72. But in his last 12 rounds, he's only shot 2 rounds in the 70s, a 72 at the Travelers, like I mentioned, which was in June, and a 71 last week in the Friday round. The thing I like about Kevin Na is he's really fresh. A lot of guys are getting into a really heavy area of the schedule where there is a lot of travel, long distance travel, a lot of weeks in a row as guys are cramming to get into the playoffs. And Kevin Na played after the Travelers. He played once in July. He's played once in August. And now he's going for his second week in a row. And I think a fresh player playing their second week in a row grades out really well. And he's got a really nice course history here. I believe it was tied second last year or something along those lines. Maybe I might be getting my Kevins confused, but he has some really nice course history here. So I like that element of Kevin Na. Second would be Kevin Kisner. Ooh. Although the big concern with Kisner is the 79 on Sunday at the WGC. There's a chance that round gets away. You make a couple of big numbers, it can get away from you quick out there, but it is a concern of mine. But Kiz has been playing some, not the kind of golf I typically like. But I think there is something going with him because he's a really good putter. And I really like that aspect. I think it's a really good course fit. He is an accurate driver of the golf ball. He's 20th on tour for the year. He's 14th in strokes gained putting. There is a fit here. And he has 3 top 10s at this venue as well. So I think Kisner fits. And I like Streelman's approach game. And I liked what I saw from him last week. So he would be my third Kevin. He's definitely an option. He was 19th at the Open Championship. Yeah, and the team missed 2 cuts before that. Streelman did, but in his 5 before that, they were all top 26s. So basically, 5 top 26 finish, or excuse me, 6 top 26 finishes in his last 8 starts for the Streelman version of the Kevins. Okay, Sia, would you like to take a crack at ranking the Kevins, or would you like to point out someone else in the 8K range here?
I'll rank the Kevins.
Okay.
I'll go Streelman, Na, and then Kisner. Listen, Kisner lost 11.55 strokes tee to green last week. I realize that's just 1 week, but it's kind of scary. He lost over 9 strokes on approach, and you showed it. You showed the round by round, which again, you can see watching us on YouTube. It was pretty much every round where he was losing on approach. Again, it's just one tournament. I'm not going to single him out in the sense that he's terrible all of a sudden. But as he ranks towards some of the other guys I like Kevin Streelman, for example, or Seamus Power, or Charles Schwartzel, the other guy that I like in the 8K range, it's just not something I'm interested in. Okay, let's talk about Schwartzel here, because the last time we saw him was a runner-up at the 3M, which I got to tell you, Sia, feels like a decade ago. Like there's been a lot of golf that has been played all over the globe since then. I can't imagine many people necessarily remember it, but it's not just that event. He's been on a pretty good stretch of golf right now. Yeah, he has. I mean, he's striking the ball really well. And I think it's a really, this is really interesting because Greg brought up recent history versus course history. And I agree with him. I tend to lean more recent history than I would course history. But I think Charles Schwartzel and Kevin Streelman, for example, are an interesting case study in terms of bad course history and good recent history. And I think the opposite is true for Siwoo Kim and Sung Jae Im. I think when we look after this tournament, we can look at those 4 guys and see kind of what bore out from whether recent history was better than course history or vice versa. But Charles Schwartzel, listen, this show and myself, we've been on Charles Schwartzel for quite some time. And in this field, I don't think he's elite, but I think he's a guy that can contend on a Sunday afternoon, especially the way the ball striking is going and his recent form.
And he does have some good course history too. I mean, he did miss his last cut, Sia, but he was tied 3rd in 2015, tied 14th in 2012. So those are the only 3 times he's played here. And when he missed the cut last year, he shot 70-69. So I don't think you're far off at all. I like the Schwartzel play.
He has gained strokes off the tee in 9 consecutive measured events. The only event that is not measured during that stretch was the one that he and Louis Oosthuizen lost in a playoff to Leishman and Smith at the Zurich Classic. So we obviously played well that week. Yeah, these are pretty strong advanced metrics for a guy that, again, it's early on a Monday. We'll see how this shakes out, but could fly a bit under the radar just because people forgot about him. It's been a long time since we've seen him play. Greg, before I move on to the 7K range, anybody else in the 8s we want to hit on?
Oh, I was looking at Schwartzel after the Kevins. I think there are a couple guys that I would stay. Like I already mentioned, EVR, I'm not all that interested in.
Yeah.
Justin Rose, I think, is just a very curious case.
Justin
right?
Rose.
I mean, I can't believe it, but he's not going to make the playoffs. This guy in 2019, he needs a great week to make the playoffs, and he has the ability to do that. But that would be the narrative for Justin Rose. Is Justin Rose motivated, determined enough? He is talented enough, but he's not playing well enough. Can his will access some of that talent from 2018 and get him into the playoffs? I don't know. But I don't like playing that way in fantasy, as Sia mentioned at the top of the show.
I have been in auto fade Rose mode for 6 months, and I've survived it basically. I mean, the weeks that he has good results, the 7th at the Masters, he had a scorching historic Thursday and putted the lights out. The T8 at the PGA Championship gained over 11 strokes, but I mean, I've said this before, being held up with sticks and air. That is what is holding this game together, and it hasn't been that good in the last month. The metrics don't back this up. He's what's that meme? You're not that guy, buddy. You're not. What's that Jacob always says? Oh, yeah. I wish Jacob was here.
I think you're not that guy, buddy. I think
you're not that guy, buddy. Justin Rose is not that guy, buddy. 7K range, shall we? Let's do it. 7K range starts with Brandt Snedeker, also pretty good history around here. Mito Pereira, who's played a lot of golf all over the globe, goes all the way down, to Mark Hubbard, Ryan Armour, Kyle Stanley, Doc Redmond, to name a few. What do you see here?
Well, I see a lot of guys that I think are going to be really popular. And what I mean by that is highly owned. And I'll just kind of start there. I should have probably said Hank Lebioda. This should have been the first words out of my mouth when you just went to me. So, of course, I love Hank Lebioda. We'll get back to him, I'm sure, later. But Mito Pereira, like, what's not to like, right? I like him a lot. Jonathan Vegas, speaking of good ball strikers, the putter can get hot and cold. I think Reavie is a really interesting. Now, he's starting to look really good with the putter, and the ball striking has been there lately. Like 4 of the last 6 tournaments, he's gained either 5 strokes or more ball striking, and the putter has sort of come around a little bit. So I think Reavie's an interesting play. And the last guy I'll mention, who is sure to be popular as well, is Ryan Armour. I mean, Ryan Armour's basically your perfect course fit. He's going to keep it in the fairway, solid on approach, can get hot with the putter. I mean, Armour certainly has it all. I think he's going to be another popular guy. Let me just go ahead.
I have a Reavie nugget real quick, but before I do that, thank you, Polar Man in the chat. You're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy.
Oh, it's pal. Okay.
So good. Okay. So Reavie's kind of interesting. So he has gained strokes on approach in 6 in a row. 2 of those are, he's played 8 tournaments, but we don't have 2 of them measured. And the other thing is, if you believe in kind of the proximity buckets, which I am happy to tell you it's flawed, it's not perfect, but if you believe in it, From 125 to 150, he's 11th. From 150 to 175, he's 10th. That's a lot of shots come from those ranges on the PGA Tour, especially here. Now, I don't think that he forgets how to hit a golf ball when he goes to 176 yards, like his stats indicate, which is why I think it's a little bit flawed, but there might be something there. Sorry, C, what were you going to say?
No, I just wanted to start and finish with Hank Lebioda, who I obviously love. One thing, the narrative on him, of course, he had been playing really well. Of course, he had that withdrawal a couple of weeks ago. But I think what people were worried about, to the extent anybody was worried about Hank Lebioda, they were worried about, well, is that putter going to stay hot? We know the ball striking is pretty good, but is the putter going to stay hot? I do want to mention in the tournament that he unfortunately had to withdraw from, in those 2 rounds, he wasn't very good with the putter, and yet he was going to make the cut. He had eagled his last hole, assuming he was going to have a lot of momentum going into round 3. So he cleared the cut by a couple shots with a pretty pedestrian putter. So we now have sort of a case study or a sample size of, hey, the putter's not super hot, and this guy is still paying off his price. And at this price, I mean, he doesn't need to do much to pay off this price tag.
So it was WD, then where he had made the cut on Friday night. If you didn't see that, he left to attend to a family medical emergency. The 3 starts before that were all top 8 finishes, and the 4, 5, 6, 7 starts before that, he had made the cut, and every single one of them had been piling up top 20. So if you assume that version of Lebioda's coming back this week to Greensboro, you're probably in for a pretty nice little week. Okay, Greg, your turn. $7,000 range. There's a million names here. So where do we start picking these guys out?
The first guy I think is really interesting. And I'm usually not in this camp, but this week I think I am. He's at 7,800. It's JT Poston. Now I watched JT Poston give away a tournament 2 starts ago at the Barbasol. He should have won that event. He shot 65, 66, 66, and 70 where he hit it out of bounds at 15. And they had to get the string out and everything, and it was
it was a slow motion car wreck is what that was.
It was just brutal to watch. But he came back the next week. The very next week at the 3M, and he put together 3 great rounds, 69, 66, 66 on Sunday. It was a 76 on Saturday that really derailed him. Now, when you have a guy like JT Poston, who is second on the PGA Tour in strokes gained putting, he is a great putter. And if you watch the Barbasol, that was on full display. So I love that aspect. He's won here before. I love that aspect. And I think he's really motivated, where maybe Seamus Power has kind of reached that summit and is on, that was the peak, and he's going to kind of come back to normal a little bit. JT Poston is still reaching for it. And the reason you see that T26 and you say, okay, well, maybe that was him coming back to normal, but it's the 1 round. And the 1 round as a player, you say, if I could just put 4 rounds together, I'm going to win. I'm going to do it. And I think there's something real there. And I think his metrics and his course history check all the boxes.
I think there's something interesting about stat profiles that look exactly like JT Poston's does. So Greg, absolutely right. Second on tour with the putter. He's been phenomenal. Where he hemorrhages strokes is essentially on approach. But he gained 3 at the Barbasol, the event that Greg mentioned that he kind of coughed up, and gained over 4 at the 3M Open. Now this is either outlier noise or he has found something. And if it is outlier noise, you don't lose all that much because he is cheap and he is not going to be popular. But if it is, he found something and it's going to be clicking, the reward is very large there. It's kind of,
it looks obvious, right? At the end of the week, it looks obvious.
Right. If he wins this event or finishes T5, we go, oh yeah, well, he had been striping it coming in and he's the best putter on tour. Why didn't we see this coming?
Right. He was right there. So yeah. I really like that play. I like that angle, but I do agree with you, Rick, with a guy who leans on the putter the way JT Poston does, there's volatility involved. And sometimes in a range like this, sometimes in every range, it's good to take a chance on volatility, but you combine that with good recent form. And I think he got a recipe for success. Yeah. Can I give you another guy?
Please.
Okay. Patton Kizzire.
That's the one. That's what I was looking for. Love it.
So Patton Kizzire, the 3M Open didn't go great. He started with 72. He ended up coming in tied 39th. So it wasn't a great event for him, but he was tied 11th at the John Deere, tied 25th at the Rocket Mortgage, a couple of T3s earlier in the year. And he's another one of those guys who's really strong with the putter. He's 16th in strokes gained putting for the year. But my favorite Patton Kizzire, well, I got two things I love about Patton Kizzire. One, he's 14th in birdie average.
Yes.
I love that. The thing I really like about him is what he does on Sundays. Okay. Read a couple of recent Sundays. 70 at the 3M. I mentioned that was disappointing. 65 at John Deere, 64 at Rocket Mortgage, 67 at Charles Schwab, 63 at the AT&T Byron Nelson. The guy is not afraid of payday.
He has gained strokes on Sunday in 7 of his last 8 Sundays, and the majority of them are like 3 strokes or more, which to put into perspective is a lot. Very hot on Sundays. I liked Kizzire as well. I love the birdie ability. I love that get hot ability. The other one that I thought was interesting was Adam Schenk. Played very well last week at the Barracuda. 4th place finish there. Now his second 4th place finish in his last 4 starts. He's made 5 consecutive cuts. Remember, there was a time where he was that consistent cut maker. Not so much anymore, but he's showing a bit more upside, which I think is pretty valuable. See, anybody else in this $7,000 range? I've got a silver medalist who has finished inside the top 6 in half of his 4 trips to Greensboro. I've got some guys that play fast and putt well. Is there anybody else here that I could sell you on?
So I definitely mentioned the guys that I like that I know are probably going to be really popular, although how popular, it's a big 7K range. But I mean, obviously guys like Mito and Lebioda, maybe Reeve are probably going to be a little popular, but I have a guy that's not going to be popular because his recent form is garbage and his course history is not very good either.
Perfect. I love him. Right. He hasn't been good and he stinks here. I love him. I'm so
the Rafael Campos argument. No, it's Brandon Todd. I always say
I like it. I looked at
Brendan
him too.
Todd.
Brendan Todd.
Brendan Todd. I said it wrong last time. I think Brendan Todd is a good course fit at the very least.
Okay, course fit for sure. Because he should be the guy who plays out of the fairway and putts well, right? That's what you like about him. See it now. The results recently are shockingly bad. Because he had held his own for 12 or 15 months on tour, especially kind of when the tour came back. But it's shocking to see his results because you think this would be a pretty good place for him.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things. I mean, do you really want to buy early on Brendan Todd? Typically no. But again, I do think he's a good course fit. And, I think he's going to hit, let's put it this way. I think he's going to hit fairways. And I know he can get hot with the putter. So it's one of those things where if everybody's going to be on all these popular guys, including myself, I'm going to be on a lot of the popular guys too. If I'm trying to find some ownership leverage, it's probably with a guy that has a pedigree like Brendan Todd.
See, the thing is with Brendan Todd, you mentioned the results, how they've been like shockingly bad. He has to play really well to shoot the scores that get him in contention, and it has to be really consistent. So when I look at a guy like Brendan Todd, who hits a lot of fairways and leans on the putter, he is not going to go shoot 62 the way like Patton Kizzire has that kind of capability, or Kevin Na, you feel like could go shoot the eyes out of it. With Brendan Todd, I feel like he's got to be a little bit more steady. And right now he's shooting 72 and 71. And that's not far off from being 2 rounds of 67, making the cut and making it 4 rounds of 67 and finishing in the top 10, or shooting 1 round of 65. And all of a sudden he wins. So I don't think you're far off from him. Brendan Todd's a guy who can miss cuts and be a lot closer than it really looks.
So I don't know if anybody cares about this, but I sometimes look at this. His last 5 missed cuts have been, he missed it by 1 shot or 2 shots. He never coughs it up. And that 1 or 2 shots to get yourself into the weekend, potentially move up. I mean, I think marking it as a missed cut and treating it as if he shot back 280s is much different than what he actually
Absolutely. Did. You have to look at scores when you look at recent form. It's an important aspect.
$6,000 range. This is where we are looking for some value. Starts with Adam Hadwin, Brian Stewart, Jim Herman, goes all the way down to Rafael Campos is $6,000 again. Someone named Matt Vick is $6,000. Christopher Ventura, $6,000. He hasn't played a lot recently. Actually, I don't know that. Bill Haas got into this field. I believe he was a sponsor's exemption. He's 6,000. See ya. What do you got?
It's not a great range. Last week we started at the bottom with our guy Jim Herman, and so
that was awesome for 18 holes.
It was good for 27, I think, and then it completely fell apart. So, but I think he scored, what was it, 72 or 67 DK points.
Which, by the way, yes, you're absolutely right. And I forgot to point this out 40 minutes ago. Hideki Matsuyama finished second and had 1/2 point less than Abraham Answer last week because he made 2 eagles. So be very aware. We talk a lot about finishing position, but it is not always perfectly correlated with DraftKings points. Birdies in bunches is always going to be king.
Right. And I think if we're talking about Jim Herman, he clearly outperformed his min price of 6,000 last week, regardless of Saturday and Sunday not going very well for him. But let me just make it fun and then start at the bottom, and then I'll just give a few other names. I don't love this range. And the cool thing is, I think the pricing is so soft in this tournament, especially in that 7 and 8K range. To me, you really don't have to dip down into this range much unless you just really like a guy. But I'll tell you, I want to follow guys that are good putters. And so this guy doesn't fit that narrative, but he has made 5 out of the last 7 cuts, and it's Michael Gellerman at min price 6K. So if you feel like jamming in a 6K guy because you want to, stack some guys at the top, I think you could probably do worse than Michael Gellerman. I'll just give out a few more names, Rick, before you
do that. Gellerman has been so if you created models that were only like 100% strokes gained approach, Gellerman would be the number 1 player every single week because he just absolutely hits the hell out of it. Cannot do anything else, but he hits the crap out of the ball, and he's got a couple of he makes enough cuts here. This isn't the worst thing I've ever heard you say, Sia. The worst thing I ever heard you say was Rafael Campos at 6,000.
Yes, that was the worst thing I've ever said. And if you, again, this is somewhat of a small sample size, but if you look at the putting, he's doing better. He only lost 1 stroke the last time he was out. Of course, at the Barracuda, he missed the cut, obviously, and I don't think he was very good. But again, approach, can you get a hot putter? Maybe. I don't like relying on that, but again, he's 6K. The only other 6K guys that really came to mind, Michael Thompson, I think, is a good course fit. I like him. I don't think his course history is great, but a guy whose course history is pretty good for this price is Bryce Garnett. I like him. I think he'll find the fairways and could potentially get hot with the putter. And I'll just give one other name out. He's a random. He almost sounds like a fake golfer, we talk about from like a video game. Is this guy even real? Mark Anderson at 6,300. He's made 3 out of the last 5 cuts. Now, he can get super volatile with the ball striking. Super volatile. But he does sometimes, with the putter and with the ball striking, he does sometimes pop like every other tournament. So I think he's somebody to consider.
I've never said these words, but if you were ever going to play Bryce Garnett, I think this is probably the week. You mentioned it. See a couple of good results here. He does the 2 things that I think are interesting: hit fairways and putt, and see what happens. So Bryce Garnett, $6,800. I'm worried, but hey, we're in the $6,000 range. And Greg, when we're in the $6,000 range, we got to take some shots. So what shots are we taking?
Okay, so I got a couple, and I think there's some reasonable plays in this range. One is Jim Herman. I know that we were on him last week and it didn't necessarily finish well, but that's a big time event. That's a really big stage for a Jim Herman. And you could definitely look at that tournament last week, even though it was a 73-75 over the weekend, and say, hey, I'm proud of him. So I'm in that camp. And I look at a guy who's all of a sudden one of the ultimate poppers on the PGA Tour, the guy that is the laughing stock of the tour, who all of a sudden wins. And now all of a sudden he's playing consistent golf ever since the Memorial, all the way back in early June. He's done nothing but finish inside the top 30 until last week. And as a past champion in a field like this, I think he's worth another shot.
I do think it's interesting that there was the Jim Herman love last week that no one will go back to, but you can still look at it and say, well, he outperformed his price. He is now on a stretch of, 5 pretty decent weeks. And we did that the week before he goes to the place that he won at last year. There's something here to be said about just rolling Jim Herman right back out there.
I'd go right back to him. I don't have any problem with that at all. Because I think that 73-75 over last weekend is not indicative of his form. I think it's just it's a little bit of a big stage for him. And that's okay. And it happens on other stages too. It can happen. I don't think it's all that bad. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as it looks. So a couple of other guys in this range, I'll give you 2 other names. This is all recent form play.
Okay.
Roger Sloan,
yep.
And Sam Ryder. These guys, they're trending in the right direction. For Roger Sloan, it was tied 31st at the Barbasol. It was tied 16th at the 3M. And last week at the Barracuda, it was 6th place. The guy is feeling confident. I think that has a really, really, really strong value. And he's outside the bubble looking in to get into the playoffs. He sits at 131st right now in the FedEx Cup. He's one of those bubble boys that I think is going to have a real chance come Sunday. And then real quick on Sam Ryder, you're talking about 3 pretty good finishes in a row. Maybe Barracuda tied 34th. It doesn't impress you, but it was a tied 25th at the 3M and a tied 3rd at the Barbasol before that.
And the Barbasol is where he gained 11 strokes on approach. Sloan was my favorite as well. He's just been piling up, made cuts. He's got 2 top 40s in the 2 trips that he's made to Greensboro. He's showing a little bit of that upside. Yeah, Sloan was my favorite at 6,700.
Let me jump in real quick because with Roger Sloan, and this is, I think, sort of the fallacy in just relying on models completely, because you just showed Sloan's what I don't know how many tournaments it showed on the screen, but his strokes gain metrics, the last 2 or 3 times out, everything has really measured out. The approach game has been excellent. The putter has been excellent. But look at the John Deere Classic. Yeah, he lost so many strokes off the tee and on approach. I mean, that's a total of almost 10 strokes. So if you're looking at a model and you're looking at the last 24 rounds, well, it's going to tell a much different story because he's going to be ranked like 95th and 110th in all these categories.
A fifth of those rounds, he was absolutely horrible, but the other 80%, he was pretty good. Yeah,
right. And so again, I'm cherry picking my sample size here, but my point is when you're looking at a model, you can't just generalize. Oh, he's been that rank, that he's been that bad over all of those tournaments. It's just not true. You have to look at the breakdown tournament to tournament.
I love it. Good point. I think that's going to do it, gentlemen.
One more thing,
please.
I don't know if you guys saw on the first cut pod, or Greg, I don't know if you saw it. We had an all Twitter team last week, which included Jim Herman, Abraham Answer, Bryson Brooks. I can't remember who the odd man out there is.
Homa was probably on there.
Homa was on there. Well, guess what? I put that lineup in. I mean, it was a small tournament, but I put that lineup in and it cashed. The all Twitter team cashed.
Look at that. Giving away lineups 1 for 1. Perfect winning rate.
Phil was the 6th guy in that one. We just named all 6.
Did Phil use the arm lock all 4 rounds? I know he used it round 1. I know he used it round 4. I thought he went back to. Do we know this? Anybody? Did you catch this?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure he switched it midweek. I'd have to look, but wow, that's pretty good. I like that. The
good week
Twitter
for
team.
Phil. All in all, good week.
Anything else before we get out of here? That's a great little nugget. Sia, thank you.
Yeah, all Twitter team. Jim Herman, Twitter it's underrated.
It's underrated. All right, that'll do it for the DFS preview for this week's Wyndham Championship. Tuesday is your mega preview pod, round by round recaps, obviously, and lots of implications because this is the final event of the regular season. But for now, let me thank myself for producing this show. Let me thank Sia Nejad, who you can find on Twitter at Sia Nejad. That's Greg DuCharme, who is the real GFD, and you can find me at RickRunGood. This has been The First Cut, and we'll catch you next time.